Hello, everybody. Welcome to Charting with Dan. Here back on Monday after our holiday delayed us from a week last week. Yeah. We are here on our normal date, normal time, as close to a normal time as we can get on this show, and it depends on the charts. I'm Dan Murrell. Joining me, as always, Lon Harris. How you doing, Lon?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Before we start, no easy way to get in or get out of this, but I felt like just to address it right off the bat, the top story, not only in sports, but in news and entertainment and really around the world. Obviously, yesterday, the tragic death of Kobe Bryant, who an NBA star and so much more to so many other people around the world. His daughter and 7 others in a helicopter crash outside here, right here in Los Angeles. The city, obviously, you can almost feel it in the air. A shocking event. And really, you read all of the people remembering him, the people that knew him, the people that watched him for years, were fans of him. And I think that anytime someone as well known as him, as renowned as Kobe Bryant passes, there's this rush to determine the legacy. Mm-hmm. And that does not happen in the hours or the days after someone passes. That happens in the years and decades afterwards. And, I don't think there's a person on this planet that in some way, shape, or form does not live a complicated life. And I would certainly don't think that any of us would want to immediately decide yay or nay on us. Really, I think the thing that you can measure is impact. And Kobe Bryant was someone, I'm obviously, this shouldn't be a shocker, not the biggest sports guy. But
we host a show about box office.
Exactly.
Charts.
Yes. No shocker here. But particularly, I was never, that deep into the NBA. However, and I think this is a sign of the kind of really, and we overuse this word, but the kind of icon that Kobe Bryant was. I still knew what the Lakers were up to, and I still I remember Kobe Bryant scoring 81 points because that was massive news. And then beyond that, obviously the impact he had on the game of basketball, the Lakers, the city of Los Angeles, the fans not only here but his fans around the world, numbering in the tens of millions, through his charitable work, through the work that he did to coach the next generation of greats, both in the NBA and the WNBA, and then the world of entertainment, an Oscar winner, an Academy Award winner for an animated short for Dear Basketball. We sort of, when it won, we all said, oh well, of course, how could we not have guessed? But it really was a love letter to the game that had changed his life, that he devoted his life to helping do that for other people. So,
and as we were saying before the show, if you want to check out Dear Basketball, his company has actually put it on YouTube for free. So you can today just pull it up, go to YouTube and search. Yeah. You can find it and stream it for free.
But most importantly, a lot of families, not just Kobe Bryant's family, but the families of the other victims of that crash, mourning today. So, condolences and best wishes. Obviously, Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, 13 years old, tragically also passed away. John Altobelli, his wife Carrie, and daughter Alyssa both passed away.
He was the baseball coach for Orange Coast College, which is one of our junior colleges down in Orange County.
Another coach, Christina Mauser, passed away. Sarah Chester and her daughter Peyton, and then Ara Zabayan, the pilot of the helicopter, all tragic victims of this accident. So, there are a handful of people that come through that have this sort of impact across so many different arenas. And like I said, even if you're not the biggest NBA guy, you knew who Kobe Bryant was. You knew his face, you knew his name, you knew his reputation, you knew everything, and so much seemed to be ahead of him, and just a very tragic situation for everyone, for the families involved. So, it's hard to know what to say in moments like these, but I felt like, we should acknowledge it, and send, obviously you never want any family to be in this sort of position. And then beyond that family, just so many people deeply affected by this. I was traveling yesterday and just in the airports saw some people deeply affected by this, and you never want this to happen to anyone for any reason. But it's someone who is this impactful, it just drives home even more how precious life is, and how, we all should probably treasure it more than we do. So, like I said, no easy transition from that. Obviously, that is something that people will be addressing, and you know, the fallout for that will resonate for a long time to come. But let's turn to the box office results for this weekend, which, you know, Lon, this will be kind of an odd show because there's another thing that we have to talk about that was the big story that happened internationally this weekend. Another just very unfortunate and tragic situation.
It's been a rough week.
It's been a rough week, developing in China. But let's focus first on the domestic box office. This weekend, the number one film repeating, Bad Boys for Life, banking another $34 million, continuing its run at the top of the box office. Audiences really continuing to respond to this, and I'm very personally gratified by this. Jumping one spot from number 3 to number 2, 1917 actually lost less than 30% from last weekend. Audiences really finding and responding to it. Obviously, the Oscar nominations were, I think, probably a big factor and at least piquing a lot of interest, but I'm so gratified to see that audiences, not just here in the U.S., but we'll look in a moment internationally also, are finding 1917, because I really do think it's a special movie. And as we've mentioned, it picked up more awards, some DGA awards over the weekend. It is cementing its status as a Best Picture frontrunner, although I still think that it's a very wide open race.
There's still a few movies I think that could nab it, but I think all of those are more moving into the dark horse category. I feel like it seems like the buzz is consolidating around 1917 as the consensus pick.
It's very odd because when you look at this release structure, this is the closest I can think of for a little while at least to the old way of doing things, which is it opened in very limited release, not just for 1 week, but I think for 2 weeks. And then over time, partly because it's the beginning of the year, there's not as much competition, but Universal has kept it in screens. It's expanding even more. The drop-offs have been good. It's building an audience. I mean, this is a lot more like the traditional release that you would see at a time when there was much less competition at the box office for not just Oscar films, but for most movies.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we've been seeing, we've been talking about this on the show a lot. The sort of award season keeps stretching kind of earlier and earlier in the season. I think this year we're starting to see some films maybe hurt by peaking too early. The Irishman in particular, to me, strikes me as, man, if the Oscars were voted on like a month ago, the Irishman would have maybe won. Now I really don't feel like it's got a clear, strong shot. It feels like the momentum kind of died out for that one in favor of something like Parasite or 1917.
It's weird. We talk about how things get changed so much that eventually they go back to the way that things were, because, we now have so many streaming services and so many this and that and the others, and that people have been running away from cable for so long, and now people are saying like, well, what about a bundle? Can I get a bundle of something? Or with this, I think some people are like, let's try an unconventional box office approach. It's like, well, that's actually the conventional box office approach that was rethought, and then it becomes unconventional. So the way that trends come and go, 3D was a novelty, and then it was overused, and then it was out, and then it was a huge novelty, and then it was overused, and now it's out, and then I'm sure in 10 years James Cameron will bring it back again.
Avatar 3, baby.
Exactly. So it's just very interesting to watch these trends and how they circle back around on each other. But good to see. For me, very happy to see 1917 continue to perform well. And
it is a movie, I will say, if you are planning to watch it at all, theatrically. This is one of those movies to go see it on the big screen. This is not a phone movie.
No. And I was actually reading an article, and I hadn't thought about this. Do you know the last Best Picture winner that grossed over $100 million domestically, which 1917 just broke that mark here domestically? But do you know the last Best Picture winner to gross over $100 million domestically?
It's definitely been a little while.
It's been a while.
I don't know.
The year was 2012.
Oh, boy.
Argo.
Argo, wow.
Argo was the last.
I did not remember that Argo was that big of a hit.
It was, Argo was a big hit and was the last Best Picture winner to gross over $100 million domestically. So if 1917 is able to pull that feat off, and it's actually a few movies that could do that, that'll just be another feather in its cap for populist support as well as people enjoying the film. So
I believe it would also be the only film ever with a purely numeric title to win Best Picture.
I think so. I think there's only a few that are nominated, but it would be one of the only ones to win.
The first one to win.
Looking at the rest of the top 5, we have at number 3 Doolittle, which drops one slot. It's now at number 3. Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman. There you go, debuting at number 4, and Jumanji: The Next Level still there,
Still hanging
still
in
in
there.
the top
Wow.
5 because The Rise of Skywalker popped so big in its opening. It's not going to outgross The Rise of Skywalker, which has now passed $500 million domestic. But as far as people still going out now in the theaters, obviously Rise of Skywalker much more front loaded because Jumanji still hanging out there.
I think
man.
it's got that family angle. It's people are still, kids maybe want to see it again. The parents may be curious to check it out. You know,
Yeah.
like a little more legs because of the kids in the audience.
Yeah.
Maybe, let's guess.
A movie that did not make the top 5 and actually for the second time this month earned what used to be an extremely rare honor or dishonor, I guess you could say. The Turning, we mentioned it last week, a adaptation of The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. Not only did not break into the top 5, but it got the second F cinema score of the month.
This is staggering. This used to be rare. Like and it used to be movies that really went out, like they promoted themselves as horror, but then they went very far afield.
There's only 23 now, I think, ever that's done that.
And the F cinema score was almost always reserved for like the marketing confused people about what movie they were actually getting. And so it's like a commentary on, well, I feel deceived. And this one is just looks like a horror, a haunted house movie.
Well, I have not seen The Turning yet, but something about the audience, something about that movie, the audience, not only did they say no, they said F no, and gave it an F. So less than a month into the movie-going year, we already have 2 movies in the F Cinema Score Club. If you saw The Turning, I guess my condolences, because it's apparently quite bad.
Oh, wow. How many movies is Finn Wolfhard in per year, do you think? How is it possible that he's working this much?
Well, first of all, considering how the industry just chews up and spits out young actors, I am very happy to see that he's cashing in now, and I hope that he's able to continue cashing in.
And great, I'm sure this is not his fault. I like Finn Wolfhard.
I think he's working nonstop.
I just feel like every single genre movie that comes out now features Finn Wolfhard in some way.
It's the Stranger Things effect. They're just like, I want a kid like the kid from Stranger Things.
Yeah, just get the kid from Stranger Things.
Like, okay.
He does have a great horror movie name. I'm not arguing.
Yeah, he's reaping the bit like John Lovitz in The Wedding Singer. Reaping the benefits. Gone insane. Hollywood's losing their minds. Yeah, no, make that money, Finn Wolfhard.
Good for you. I just don't know how he's physically doing it.
Yeah, he's young.
He was exhausted.
He's very young. He's very young. He does not have the energy that old.
It's like the multiplicity trick.
Yeah, he's twins. It's like David. Like I've heard the thing with David Copperfield is. I actually don't know.
Wait, is that true?
I heard another one. There's always
he's
rumors.
doing a Prestige.
There's always rumors, but I've heard that there's like twins involved.
Wow,
perhaps.
If that's true, and then they went and saw the Prestige, they must have been so mad,
so upset.
This movie's stealing our whole bit.
It was actually Christian Bale as David Copperfield. I don't know if you knew that. That's also true.
Oh, poor Robert Copperfield.
Right, Bob Cop. Yeah, Bob Cop.
I'd never heard that before.
Sorry. All right, let's look at the top per. It's a weird show, Lon. Let's look at the top per theater.
At this point, it's already coming
for
apart.
a second week. Bad Boys for Life takes the top spot in 3,700 plus theaters, $9,000 per theater. Again, it's January, not a huge number of new releases drawing, so that's not surprising. But hey, good for Martin Lawrence, good for Will Smith. The second week, top per theater. Congratulations!
I can't believe they give away that they die together on the poster. Spoilers.
I know, right? It says right there, live together, die together. I don't know why people are going to see. You know the ending. It's
they
like
die together.
Sixth Sense. If you just said like
very romantic.
He's dead and he doesn't know it. The Sixth Sense. How many people are going to be angry at me for
giving away
the Sixth Sense?
Yeah, well, we gave away the Prestige and Sixth Sense so far.
It's 21 years old. Come on, the Sixth Sense is almost old enough to drink.
Everybody knows that.
Everybody knows that.
Bruce Willis was dead all the time.
Yeah. Let's look at the top 5 movies internationally. So this is a newer chart, Lon. This is the box office, not counting North America, but international around the world. Number 1, Bad Boys for Life. Number 2, 1917. Number 3, a movie from South Korea, The Man Standing Next, at $15.8 million. Then Doolittle there at number 4, Jumanji: The Next Level at number 5. Lon, as I mentioned, we're going to go much, much more into the situation in China, but this was a much different international chart than we had anticipated. We talked about this last week on the show. We were expecting massive numbers out of China this weekend because it was the Chinese New Year holiday. They have been doing for the past several years, flooding the market with a bunch of new releases that some people were estimating could do up to $1 billion in box office gross just in China, just this weekend alone.
Yeah, if you recall, last year on this same weekend we did a show, and I think it was internationally was like 4 of the top 5 were these juggernaut.
We're going to look at a few of them,
right?
But well, we'll touch on that in a moment. Let's just look at the rest. The worldwide chart. Including all markets worldwide, including North America. Bad Boys for Life, including the North American gross. Number 1, $76 million. 1917 stays there at the number 2. It pocketed another $39.6 million over the weekend. Doolittle goes to number 3 worldwide with another $25 million, followed by Jumanji: The Next Level. It's hanging in there. Outlasted Frozen now and Star Wars. And then The Man Standing Next, when you throw in the North American numbers, drops to number 5. But still a number 5 debut for that movie coming out of South Korea. South Korea, man, with the Oscar nomination and nominations and success of Parasite, that is another market where we're seeing some movies pop and emerge as we go throughout the year.
It does feel like this is there's been great Korean movies coming out of Korea for like decades now. Like Old Boy was a long time ago. Like there's been a lot of great Korean filmmakers, but it does feel like it's now reached this sort of point where it's crested and Americans are now suddenly aware of all of these great Korean movies. And I'm hoping it's going to be something that it's not just a blip for Parasite and then it will go away and drop off the landscape again. I'm hoping this will create a long-term interest in Korea.
There's so much interesting work that comes out of almost every country, but Korean cinema in particular has generated so much interesting work. So yes, I do hope that this is something that people, perhaps because Parasite has crossed over more, will draw interest in. Like, oh, let me find more Korean filmmakers that I enjoy.
And there definitely is, like, every year I feel like there's 2 or 3 Korean movies that sort of hit the international zeitgeist. Sort of Burning last year and The Wailing a few years ago. Like, hopefully now this will get more on Americans' radar.
Hopefully so. So, Lon, we mentioned this before, but the Chinese New Year expected to generate so much box office over the past weekend. However, that did not come to pass because basically all 70,000 theaters were closed leading up to this past weekend due to the coronavirus outbreak in China. This was not one of the biggest movie-going weekends of the year in that country. Now, before we even get into the dollars and cents of it, obviously, this is first and foremost a human story. The death toll has started to climb. There are cases now being reported in the United States. One here in Los Angeles County, one just below us in Orange County. So I don't want anyone to misconstrue this as anyone saying that this is the most important thing. This is obviously not the most important thing. The human scale of this is almost beyond capacity to measure or to think about, or the job that has to be done to try to contain the spread of this virus. And these theaters, I think, should have been closed and should remain closed until the danger passes. However, there is a reality, a financial reality to this, but just to be clear, to not misconstrue this, this is not the most important aspect of these events or this story.
One little corner
this
of the
is
coronavirus.
This is the box office corner of this story. Right. It is significant in the sense, and we'll look at it on a global scale as far as the box office market, but far more important is the human scale and the global scale of this and how it affects people's lives in actuality. So having said that, as I mentioned, this weekend expected to generate up to $1 billion in box office grosses. I believe it was 7 major releases were pulled from their release dates. One of them was made available for streaming, but there's some others that are big. We mentioned the big one that we talked about last week, Detective Chinatown 3, which was a massive hit and a huge franchise, and several others have not been rescheduled, but it's assumed that they will be released because it's a very lucrative franchise, and all of them were very lucrative opportunities. Some reports have speculated, there's one in Deadline that I read this morning, has speculated that theaters could remain closed for up to a month, depending on the containment and how it goes. And as I said, I think those theaters should remain closed until the danger has passed and it's deemed safe to reopen them. However, that does not change the fact, and I put this graph together here, this is just the last 3 years, some of the films that were released over the Chinese New Year, and you can see the escalation of how much money. Now, this is just these are not their final grosses. These are their opening weekend grosses in China. So there you see in 2017, those 3 titles there combined up for over $500 million in openings. 2018, Detective Chinatown 2, which is a movie that we mentioned. I'm sorry, these are not, flip what I just said. These are final grosses, not just opening, but still, the large part of their business was done on their opening weekend. So these are final grosses, not opening weekend grosses. Detective Chinatown 2, as you can see, plus Operation Red Sea and Monster Hunt 2, all three movies released on the same weekend, Chinese New Year, generating $1.5 billion in total grosses. And then last year, The Wandering Earth, a massive worldwide hit, almost $700 million just by itself. Then you throw in Crazy Alien and Pegasus. We talked about both of those. Another $1.3 billion. Again, just those 3 films. So, no, they did not make all of that money in one weekend. Apologies for my misspeak earlier. However, they had a prestige launch date. This is a multi-day holiday in China, 5 days or more. And so
it's sort of comparable to a Christmas movie season.
Exactly.
Over there.
Exactly. It's the analogy that I've been like, it is like, imagine if it were Christmas, there were twice as many theaters in the United States as there are currently, or more, probably much, much more. And Star Wars and Jumanji and Frozen 2 and Knives Out were all coming out the same weekend, and every theater had to close with less than a week in advance notice. That's the kind of situation that the Chinese film industry is facing. So there's a couple of things here. Number one, obviously, all of those films are going to be looking for new release dates. It's a very uncertain future. There's very little word about when they can start rescheduling films.
Right. Everything is sort of on hold for the time being while they work out the public safety and health issues.
Yes. Now, the difference being the Chinese film industry is much more government oversight in China. So it's not here where, the PR teams and the studios and the chains, like the government decides which movies get shown and when. So we have talked about on the show how as the years have gone on, the Chinese the government and the film industry has focused much more on homegrown films, on films that they themselves make, and much less on imports from Hollywood. So this means, first of all, that they're going to have to find new dates for all of these major prestige releases. Who knows when they're going to be? But secondly, it's very likely, many people say it's very likely that, first of all, due to the fact that the theaters may be closed in the very near future, and secondly, that they're going to have to redate a lot of these big Chinese films, and obviously the Chinese government and the film industry would like the moviegoer money to flow into China's pocket and not necessarily be flowing out to Hollywood. It's very possible that a lot of the movies from the major studios and some of the minor studios that were scheduled for release will either be pushed or may not come out in China at all, because remember, China can just pull the date. And
they can just say this movie doesn't play here, and that's it.
Here, and that's it. There's no appeal. There's no reschedule. Right. It could just be not happening, and I think that could affect certain films to a varying degree. So here's a few of the films that have current release dates coming up in China that are scheduled right now in China. Jojo Rabbit opening, currently scheduled to open on February 12th. Little Women on the 14th. 1917 on the 21st. Doolittle on the 21st, Marriage Story on the 28th of February, and then Sonic on February 28th. Now, obviously, Jojo Rabbit and Little Women, Marriage Story, and I think to an extent 1917, probably we're not counting on the Chinese market. It's not make or break for those films.
Certainly not.
It would certainly be nice for those films, I think, to break out, but the Chinese market, I don't think, a key to any of their strategy as far as
Netflix was really counting on China to put Marriage Story over the top, that's on them.
Yeah, exactly. But the two that I think this could affect in a major way are obviously Doolittle,
which really needs the boost anyway.
Really needs the boost. I mean, it is domestically, it is very much a disappointment. And as we mentioned last week, the reshoots and a lot of the things that even increased the budget more were done with an eye towards increasing its appeal for international audiences. Obviously, China, the biggest box office market outside of the United States. Before the theaters had to be closed down, much speculation that China would surpass the United States this year to to become the biggest market in the world for movies. If Doolittle is pushed, obviously, that's going to cause a lot of scrambling. Secondly, if it's pushed to a release date against a Detective Chinatown 3, for example, then you could see some really substantial difference in those results. And then worst of all, if the date is pulled completely, I think that could have a devastating financial impact and really undercut a lot of Universal strategy for how they made and marketed that film.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about if you're going to the trouble to pay to bring on board an international star of the caliber of Robert Downey Jr., you're banking on that he's going to open that film wherever they love him and the MCU, and one of those markets is definitely China. Like, part of the strategy of bringing in Robert Downey Jr. to that movie is, well, this will now open in China because he's Iron Man and they know him over there. That's a real wrench in their plan. I mean, not that the movie was doing spectacularly outside of China, but that's really a curveball.
But there was really a lot of pressure, I think, for it to perform well. And now this is just an X factor thrown in, even more than just not knowing if a movie is going to perform.
Right. I think we'd even talked about Warcraft as a precedent a few weeks ago for Doolittle. Like, you could sort of temper a bad performance domestically if you really sell the Chinese audience on it.
Yeah, Pacific Rim, another one. The other film I think also on that chart, Sonic, another movie that is based on a video game character, has had very troubled production here in the U.S. We'll see what the response to it is. I think, well, you know how I hate tracking, Lon, but early tracking seems to at least suggest that it's not in line to be a total bomb, but you never know. It could go up, it could go down, depending on how reviews are, etc. But if Sonic is pulled or delayed, again, you could see perhaps a different fate for that film when it comes down to the final reckoning. And keeping in mind, those are all February dates, depending on the length of this crisis. Those dates could all be moot, because if the theaters are closed for another month, then,
that would take
all
you
of
to the
those
end of
films are going to have to be rescheduled or will be pulled. And again, the studios have no real control or say over that. So, this is a seismic event in the business of Hollywood and the Chinese film business. Obviously not on the same scale as the seismic event it is on a human level, on a world health level. That is the most important. However, hopefully once that crisis is resolved, and it would be wonderful if that could be efficient and fast for the sake of everyone. Let's hope so. But that is going to be, I think, when it's all said and done, part of the pieces that are going to have to be picked up on the business side is it is going to be a very nebulous, unstable, unpredictable market, because this is a massive event and a massive happening, and we'll see where we go from here. It is definitely going to be a story that we will be talking about not just next week or the week after, but probably for the rest of this year, potentially into next year, because the effect just ripples outward from where we are now. So very intriguing to keep an eye on. Obviously, once the human factor has been, again, it's tough to talk about these things, because that's my job and that's our job here, is to talk about movies and talk about film. But it's also, perspective is important. And so obviously the number one concern and priority is the well-being and health of everyone in China, around the world, and then everything else we'll talk about after that. So let's move on to another feature on the show that we've been doing, Lon, and we actually have some news. We have some news this week, but it's the countdown to New Mutants.
I mean, still probably, right?
It seems like it. We're 68 days. We're 68 days away from the stated release date, and Lon, they put out a new poster. They put out a new poster, and it's got a release. It's got April 3rd on the poster.
Wow,
if it didn't have a release date on it, we might add a second question mark to that countdown.
Yeah.
But there's a new poster coming out. It was the debut of the new, you can't really see it, the new 20th Century Films logo on the bottom.
Oh, right. It's a little
you can
hard
see it
to
doesn't
see.
say Fox, but if you go look at the picture online, but there's a new poster. It's got a date on it. So that question mark is getting less and less question mark, Elon, because it appears I'm still not sold.
I'm picturing the question mark is like the Back to the Future photo, where it's going to like
the dot starts to fade.
We'll start to see through it eventually.
Maybe I'll do that every week. I'll just fade the question mark out ever more subtly until
like Marty's brother and sister from the photo.
The head's gone. And then the face. One of them was in a Mickey Mouse T-shirt, weren't they?
The brother, right?
Yeah, the brother.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Strange coincidence.
Oh,
it's not even a coincidence. It's
That'd be a
just
good
dumb.
Schmoedown question.
So,
what are they wearing?
What is Marty's brother wearing?
Back to the Future photo.
It's a 5-pointer. Challenge it. No, never mind. Anyway, you'll see.
A few of them out there.
Exactly. A few of the viewers will get there. So yeah, there's a new poster, but Lon, we're going to continue looking at New Mutants history because it is just so long and
Storied,
vast
yeah.
and varied and storied. And Lon, we went back to the very beginning. This week in New Mutants history, I went back to September 21st, 2009, which was the announcement of a New Mutants movie in development.
Wow.
So let's look at what happened in the days surrounding that. September 18th, pre-sales for Twilight New Moon were reported to be very strong.
Better than Twilight New Mutants.
Yes, much better than Twilight New Mutants. On September 20th, Brett Favre broke the NFL consecutive start record. That same day, Bryan Cranston won his second Emmy for Breaking Bad for playing Walter White.
Very good.
And then the next day, that Monday, September 21st, 2009, had a Blu-ray release event for X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Wow.
Producer Lauren Schuler Donner announced that a New Mutants film was in development.
Hot ticket, that X-Men Origins Wolverine Blu-ray release event.
Party. Yeah.
But they had kick-ass swag.
This really, there's going to be a lot of sentences that date what we're doing, but I think this one really does. The next day, on September 22nd, Marilyn Manson announced that he had swine flu.
I don't remember this at all.
He announced in a blog that he had swine flu. Now, this claim was later called into question.
So he didn't have swine flu.
That was the allegation, was that he was just being Marilyn Manson.
Faked having swine flu?
He was just out to shock.
Listen.
Just a few days after, Miley Cyrus released the official video on YouTube for Party in the USA and was being linked to her co-star, Liam Hemsworth.
Who was not really he was famous for being the guy who's probably dating Miley Cyrus. At this point.
I mean, he'd been in a few movies.
Brother of Chris, maybe.
Yeah, but we were in a pre-Hunger Games world.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, not the Liam Hemsworth we know and love today. Not that level of fame for the Hemsworths.
I mean, Chris was the guy from Star Trek at this point.
Exactly.
So really, neither Hemsworth was a
they were
marquee
not yet
name.
Hemsworthy.
Yeah, but so official Party in the USA music video, and then on September 26th on the set of the Tonight Show, Conan O'Brien suffered a concussion. He was doing a bit with Terry Hatcher. He fell on the stage, and you remember the Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien?
Yeah, that long-running, storied late-night franchise.
Think about Conan O'Brien hosting the Tonight Show. Mm-hmm. Think about Conan O'Brien now. And think about everything that happened in between.
Yeah, that's how long.
And just think about the fact that New Mutants has been actively in production and development for that long.
It's a long road.
Over 10 years, Lon. Over a decade. 2 presidents.
I'm sure it's going to deliver 100%. On 10 years of anticipation. How could it not?
How could it not? So yeah, that's the very beginning, Lon. So as we continue to count down, we're going to hit some more key dates, trailer dates, original release dates, you name it, for New Mutants. But yeah, that's what was going on the very, very first week that New Mutants was announced.
I'm just picturing you opening up the New Mutants history book, and it's like one of those ancient tomes, like in the monastery, where it's you got full 2 people to fold it over.
It's an illuminated manuscript.
Yes. They're going on that long.
Yeah, it feels like going through Google sometimes. I have to get very specific in my search terms because 10 years of news has happened, and I can't just type in Miley Cyrus 2009. No, I got to look up specific news.
Burn tweezers and then use them to flip the pages.
That was fun because I got a hint that was around the time that Miley Cyrus and Liam Hemsworth started dating. So you should have seen me today Googling Miley Cyrus, Liam Hemsworth, custom range, September 1st, 2009 to September 30th, 2009.
Some people at Google looking at that search history what was this guy up to?
Why are you Googling Marilyn Manson and Miley Cyrus from 2009? And all kinds of crazy stuff. Swine flu? What? It's a long road. It's really the journey. Unfortunately, none of you get to take the journey. You just see the destination. So I enjoy this show on a whole other level. Lon, let's look at 2020 domestically and worldwide as far as the box office hits of the year. Bad Boys for Life is over $100 million. $120 million domestic, the number 1 film of the year. It'll be probably up there for a little bit, although we got Birds of Prey on the horizon. Doolittle there, number 2 at with 44 million, followed by The Grudge, Like a Boss, Underwater. Those don't change. The Gentleman and The Turning coming into the top 10 list for a few weeks. Weathering with You, The Last Full Measure, the Metropolitan Opera, all on the list now. And then we had 3 drop out. I think Last Full Measure might actually be an addition. I think I forgot to change that arrow there. But Chepak, Les Miserables from France, and then Sarler. I'm going to get it right. Well, I don't have to after this week. Saraleru Nikavaru
that looks
drops
about right.
off the list
Saraleru
after
Nikavaru.
1 week. So there you go. 3 new movies, 3 drop out, and then we'll see how things adjust next week. And then
Starting to feel to me like the only one that has any kind of legs on this list is Bad Boys.
Easily, yes.
Yeah,
No,
like
this is
all of these others are going to be wiped clean within a few weeks.
Oh no, none of these are going to be on there probably come April.
Yeah.
I think we're very likely to last probably not through February with a lot of these. Let's look at 2020 worldwide. The same movie there at number 1, Bad Boys for Life, over $200 million worldwide. Dr. Doolittle got a little bit of, I guess, bragging rights. It's getting close to $100 million worldwide. Not nearly enough though, compared to what it needs to do. And then we'll see how its release situation in China pans out. Tolo Tolo there at number 3. Tanhaji the Unsung Warrior climbing up the charts. The Gentleman climbing up the charts because it opened here in North America.
Right.
The Man Standing Next, which we mentioned from South Korea, there at number 10, which means, and I got, okay, let me ask you this, because I got run over the coals for this, but this seemed like a reasonable pronunciation to me. But if we pull that up again, Lon, the movie that dropped out, how would you pronounce that?
Lupin the First.
Okay, see, that's what it is. But why would I look at that and say that it was Lupin the Third
Instead of Lupin 3.
Right.
I think it's just because I'm familiar with the franchise.
Oh, see, I'm not. So when I see that, when I see something called Lupin,
I mean, it is. It's like
Lupin
if
the
he was
Third,
if he was a king. It's like because it's. Like you're thinking of it, like Lupin Chapter 3,
right?
But it's like his title. He's Lupin the Third,
right?
Like it would be like King David
I understand.
King Henry the Fifth.
I understand my mistake, but there were a lot of people that are just like, oh come on, Dan. It's like how was I supposed to know it was called Lupin the Third, the First?
The anime fans want you to know their thing.
Well, I know, but I do my best. I talk about it.
Yeah.
Like hardly anyone even talks about it. I try to talk about it. I do my. I'm trying. I'm trying my best.
You really try.
I'm very.
And I didn't correct you. So.
I am comparatively to most of you very old and trying to stay current and relevant.
We are.
And
we really are doing what we can, guys.
Please, just I don't mind the correction, but just consider the fact that I'm juggling a lot. So yes, my apologies for mispronouncing the very oddly titled Lupin the Third, the First last week. I'm sure it's wonderful. So that drops off the chart. Lon, there are a few things opening this week. First of all, Gretel and Hansel.
Ah, yes.
Do you know Hansel and Gretel?
Not like this.
Well, this is Gretel and Hansel.
Like a whole new.
Get ready to flip what you know on your ear, like they flip the names in the title, because this one is Gretel and Hansel.
I will say it's nothing about this project would interest me normally, because I'm not into like it's a gritty, dark fairy tale. No interest. Mm-hmm. But the director on this one has made some interesting films. He did The Black Coat's Daughter. Did you see that one?
I did not.
It's interesting. It's pretty good. So I sort of feel like, all right, like I might normally not be as interested in this, but I feel like it could be worthwhile.
Speaking of weird titles, there's a movie coming out called The Rhythm Section with Blake Lively, which is not about music.
No, it's like a revenge thriller. Yeah.
Seems like an odd title, but that's okay. Rhythm Section.
It does seem like an odd title because you hear that and you think it's going to be like
Drumline.
Right, or just like she used to sing in Motown, but now she's got to lead these misfits in the choir. It's like
is Blake Lively a drum major?
It sounds like it's going to be that thing, but no.
I would watch that if she was a drum major.
I mean,
but I don't think that she is.
Greenlight, Drumline 2. There probably is a VOD Drumline 2. Drumline 3.
I bet there's more drum lines than even we.
Yeah, it's probably gotten to the point where it's like Drumline : and then there's words now.
And then this is something that I'm looking forward to, and if you can find it, I think also. But every year they package the short films that are nominated in the short form categories for the Academy Awards, which, as we mentioned, Kobe Bryant won a couple years ago, I think, or maybe last year. But they package all of them together in one the limited. It actually goes a little beyond limited release. I think you may have a reasonable shot at finding it, but you can go see them in theaters, as many of them as I think they can get the rights and package together to. But that releases this weekend. So if you wanna really dive into the Oscar nominations, I know I'm planning to, and check out the short films, short animation, short live action, and short documentary films that are nominated for the Academy Awards. Those are being released theatrically. So always some really interesting things to find there. I would check that out if I can.
It's cool to be able to watch the Oscars and know what they're talking about. Because when I was a kid in the Oscars, that would always be like the boring 10 minutes of the show because you don't know the movies or whatever. But if you have seen them, it's really interesting. You have favorites. It makes the show better.
The one thing, though, and I was having a discussion with William Bibiani this weekend, and he brought this up, is that a lot of times they do group them by category, and there are a few particularly short documentary that you get to the end and you're just like, ooh. Yeah, it's heavy.
Oh yeah, no.
So just prepare.
I think the nature of short like when you're making a feature documentary, it's kind of got to be a balance of tones and moods because you got to keep people's attention for 90 to 100 minutes.
Yeah.
But when you're making a short documentary, you can just go for it. Like I'm going to immerse you in this subject for 20 minutes, and sometimes it can be very heavy.
Maybe start with the short docs if you can. Maybe they do. I don't know what order they present them in.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, they're separate, right? Don't they do separate programs?
I'm not sure exactly how. I think yeah, you can
just go see the live action shorts or the documentary shorts.
Start with the docs then, and maybe move on from there. Yeah. But it's something it's kind of a new tradition for me. I love doing it. So if you like just seeing interesting work from artists, obviously some nominated for an Oscar, so it stood out amongst the however many hundreds or probably thousands that get nominated.
I always try to track down
or submitted
the documentaries, like the feature documentaries every year, which has gotten a lot easier now because streaming platforms get a lot of them.
Yeah.
I just watched Honeyland, which incredible.
Also nominated for Best International Feature. Very rare for a documentary.
It's on Hulu right now, and it's incredible. I urge you to watch it.
Remember, we come a long way with Honeyland. Remember when it came out and we were both talking about, like, oh, yes, another Macedonian beekeeping
North Macedonian
movie.
beekeeping. Again, but it blows your mind. It's so intimate. Like clearly, the people who made the film just lived in this community for months, and you feel like totally immersed in it.
That is one of the great things is with all the streamers and stuff. Never easier to find a lot of these Oscar contenders.
Yeah, For Sama, which is also great about Syria, the Syrian Civil War. That's on Amazon.
American Factory is on Netflix. You can find the bulk of the best documentary nominees now on various streaming platforms.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Highly recommend you seeking those out. Lon, thank you for joining me. Like I said, it's kind of an odd week, but sometimes the real world just happens, and we roll with the punches. So thank you for watching. If you're having a tough time this week, hang in there. It's like I said, you lose someone that means a lot to a lot of people. A lot of people, it affects them heavily. But thank you for spending a little slice of your day here with us. I'm Dan Murrell. Lon Harris, and we will see you next week. We'll be talking about Gretel and Hansel, the rhythm section, everything that's happening on the world stage and right here in North America. Thanks for watching.